while Thomas and Elizabeth were weeping at the cemetery, believing they had already lost everything. An impossible scene unfolded. A girl in worn-out sneakers with bags of recyclables on her back, wearing a necklace that only 3 people in the world possessed. Elizabeth rushed forward, seized by panic. "Where did you get that necklace?" The child's answer was so shocking that it made time stand still. And little did Thomas know that this invisible girl was the key to saving his family and his soul. Thomas Mitchell had everything except what truly mattered. A billionaire businessman, owner of one of the largest real estate development firms in America, headquartered in Manhattan. His wife, Elizabeth, was a renowned architect. They lived in a 12,000 square foot penthouse in Tribeca. Cars that cost more than houses, clothes that most people would never be able to afford. But their daughter, Sophia, only 9 years old, slept alone every night, waited alone at school, ate alone, cried alone. And on a Thursday afternoon, she simply vanished. For days without news, the police turned New York City upside down. Helicopters flew over the city, reports on every news channel. Thomas's phone wouldn't stop receiving messages of condolences as if Sophia were already dead. Before the story continues, subscribe to our channel. We give life to memories and voices that never had space, but that carry the wisdom of an entire lifetime. Elizabeth couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, only cried and repeated, "My daughter, where are you?" Thomas, the man who always had control of everything, who commanded hundreds of employees, who closed multi-million-dollar deals, this man was broken. On the 4th day, desperate, they went to the cemetery in Brooklyn, to the grave of Elizabeth's deceased father. She didn't know why. Perhaps she needed her father's comfort. Maybe it was the anguish. Maybe the need for a place where they could cry. Elizabeth knelt near the old grave, hands clasped, praying between sobs. And then she saw a thin girl about 11 years old walking among the graves with a bag full of recyclables on her back, tangled hair, tattered clothes, sneakers that no longer had solace. But it wasn't the poverty that caught Elizabeth's attention, it was the necklace, a gold necklace with a pendant shining against the girl's pale skin. The necklace was unique, impossible to mistake. Elizabeth, Thomas, and Sophia had commissioned 3 identical necklaces years ago on a trip to Cape Cod. A symbol that they were a family, that they would always be together. What a lie! Elizabeth felt her heart explode in her chest. "This girl is wearing my daughter's necklace," she screamed, jumping up and pointing with a trembling finger. The girl, startled, took 2 steps back. The bag of recyclables fell to the ground with a dull thud. She looked at the 2 desperate adults running toward her, and for a second it seemed like she would flee, but she didn't. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for an instant, and when she opened them again, there was an absurd courage in that child's gaze. "She's okay," the girl said firmly. "She's safe." Elizabeth felt her legs weaken. Where is my daughter?" she screamed, grabbing the girl's shoulders desperately. The girl didn't move. She looked straight into Elizabeth's eyes and said, "At my house. I found her on the street, crying alone." "She didn't want to go back to your house." The world stopped. Thomas felt as if he had been shot in the chest. "What are you saying?" he whispered, his voice broken. The girl swallowed hard and continued. "She said you were never there, that she waited for you every day and you never came. She was crying so much, I couldn't leave her alone." Elizabeth fell to her knees on the ground, sobbing, "My God." The girl's name was Maya. She was 11 years old and lived in a small apartment with her mother, who worked as a housekeeper. Maya collected recyclables at the cemetery to help pay the bills, and it was she who saved Sophia. Not the police, not the helicopters, not the millionaire parents. An 11-year-old girl. Poor. Invisible. When Thomas and Elizabeth arrived at the modest apartment with their designer clothes and expensive watches, they felt shame of everything. The apartment was tiny. Cracked linoleum floors, a faded curtain separating the rooms, a small and nosy refrigerator, a 2-burner stove. And there, sitting on the floor, drawing on torn paper with crayons, was Sophia. When she saw her parents, she didn't run to hug them. She froze. Elizabeth collapsed. "Sophia, my daughter, are you okay?" "We were desperate. I ran away." Sophia's voice cut through the air like a blade. Thomas felt his heart stop. Elizabeth was paralyzed. Sophia continued with tears streaming down her face. "I ran away because you're never there, Mom. Never. I wake up in the morning and you've already left. I go to sleep and you still haven't come back. At school, her voice trembled. That week you forgot about me for times. For times I was left alone waiting, until the security guard took me home. And every time I tried to talk to you, you were on your phones, you were busy, you were far away. Elizabeth covered her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Sophia continued, her voice now firmer, more pained. That day I got tired. I thought, if I disappear, will they even notice? So I started walking and nobody came after me. I walked and walked until I sat on a bench and started crying. I just wanted someone to see me. Maya, who was sitting next to Sophia, held her friend's hand. She looked at Thomas and Elizabeth and said, with an impressive serenity for an 11-year-old child. I saw her crying and asked what had happened. She said her parents didn't care about her. I brought her here because, Maya paused, looking at her own bare feet, because I know what it's like when nobody sees you. We become invisible, and invisible children suffer. The silence that fell over that small apartment was deafening. Thomas knelt in front of Sophia, tears finally falling. Sophia, my daughter, I didn't know, he tried to say, but the words failed. Sophia looked at him and said something that shattered any remaining pride that Thomas still had. Dad, you never asked. The story leaked to the press and it was brutal. Billionaire's daughter runs away from home due to emotional abandonment. 9-year-old girl left alone at school, repeatedly. Businessman had time for deals, but not for daughter. The school gave devastating interviews. The principal told with tears in her eyes that Sophia frequently remained alone waiting until closing time. Teachers reported that at school presentations Sophia always looked at the door hoping her parents would arrive. They never came. Social media exploded. Rich people think money replaces love. This child was neglected. This is abandonment. I wish I had their money to give my kid what he needs, and they had everything and threw it away. Clients canceled contracts. Investors distanced themselves. Friends disappeared. Thomas and Elizabeth were being devoured alive by public opinion. And the worst part, they deserved it. Elizabeth locked herself in the bedroom for days. Thomas could barely look in the mirror because they knew all of that was true. While the couple sank into emotional mud, in the shadows of the company, something even more sinister was happening. Richard Foster, chief financial officer of the development firm, had always envied Thomas. He was smarter, more competent, more strategic, but Thomas was the owner and Richard hated that. He spent years planting allies within the company, people loyal to him, not to Thomas, people who believed Richard deserved to be in command. And now, with Thomas destroyed by the family crisis, vulnerable, distracted, it was the perfect opportunity. Richard began to forge documents, manipulate contracts, divert funds to shell accounts. He was orchestrating a silent corporate coup, meticulous, relentless. And Thomas, drowning in guilt and despair, noticed nothing. Richard was 1 week away from taking everything, but there was someone paying attention. Mrs. Rosso, Maya's mother, worked as a housekeeper in a commercial office next to Thomas's development firm. She cleaned rooms, emptied trash cans, mopped floors. Nobody noticed her. And it was exactly because of that she heard everything. One night, while cleaning a conference room, she heard voices from the other side of the thin wall. Richard and two men. Thomas is finished. Nobody will suspect now. He's so lost he won't even notice, and the company slips from his hands. What if he finds out? Finds out what? The man can barely get out of bed. He's destroyed. We close this next week, and it's over. He'll sign without even reading. Laughter. Rosa froze, the cleaning cloth still in her hand. She knew who Thomas Mitchell was. She knew he had come to pick up his daughter at her house. She knew that, despite everything, he was trying to fix things, and she wasn't going to let that man steal everything from him. Rosa ran home and told Maya. Maya, that 11-year-old girl who had saved Sophia, who had the courage of a giant, looked at her mother and said, "We need to help him." Maya knew something that adults forget. Children are invisible. Nobody pays attention to a poor girl circulating through a commercial building. Nobody suspects. Nobody asks. Maya started going to the development firm, pretended to be waiting for her mother, sat in the hallways, walked slowly near the conference rooms, and when Richard and his accomplices talked, she recorded. With an old phone her mother had received from an employer, Maya captured everything. Conversations about money diversion, photos of forged contracts, suspicious bank transfers. She wrote down dates, times, names. She assembled complete proof, and when she was sure she had enough evidence, she went to Thomas's penthouse. When Thomas opened the door and saw Maya standing there with a folder in her hand, he was confused. "Maya, what are you doing here?" She entered seriously and placed the folder on the table. "Sir, you need to see this. There's a man in your company trying to steal everything from you." Thomas frowned. Elizabeth approached. Maya opened the folder and began showing recordings, photos, documents. As Thomas listened to the recordings, his face changed, from confusion to shock, from shock to fury. "Richard," he didn't finish the sentence. Elizabeth was pale. Sophia, who was on the sofa, got up and went to Maya, held her friend's hand. Thomas looked at Maya incredulously. "You did all this?" Maya shrugged as if it were obvious. "Sir, you helped us when nobody helped. My mother has food on the table because of you. I have new clothes. Sophia has a family again. I just wanted to return the favor." Elizabeth covered her mouth emotionally. Thomas knelt in front of Maya, eyes welling up. "Maya, you're 11 years old and you did what grown men didn't have the courage to do. You saved my daughter and now you saved my company too." Maya smiled shyly. "It's just that I learned something, Mr. Thomas. We're only invisible if we let ourselves be. But if we use that the right way, we can do a lot of good." Sophia hugged Maya tightly, and in that moment, Thomas and Elizabeth realized something that would change their lives forever. They almost lost everything: their daughter, the company, dignity, their souls. And who saved them wasn't the money, wasn't the power, weren't the lawyers or security guards or important contacts. It was an 11-year-old girl, poor, invisible to the eyes of the world, but with a heart bigger than any fortune. Thomas called an emergency board meeting. Richard entered confidently, smile on his face, already imagining himself in command. But when Thomas began playing the recordings, that smile disappeared. The voices were crystal clear, the evidence irrefutable. Richard tried to defend himself, stuttering, inventing excuses, but there was no way out. The board voted for immediate dismissal. Criminal proceedings were opened. If you're enjoying this story, I want to ask you something from the heart. Pause for just a second and subscribe to our channel. But more than that, I want you to share something with us in the comments. Have you ever felt invisible? Or maybe you've been the person who made someone else feel unseen. Tell us your story. Sometimes writing it down is the first step to healing. And if this story is touching your heart, imagine how it could touch someone else's. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that love is worth more than anything money can buy. Now, let's see how this incredible story ends. 3 days later, Richard was arrested for embezzlement, corporate fraud, and racketeering. Thomas recovered the company, but more importantly, he recovered his soul. 7 months later, Thomas and Elizabeth changed everything. They reduced their workload by half. They started picking up Sophia from school. Every day they had dinner together, played, really talked. Sophia started smiling again, laughing, trusting. Maya and Mrs. Rosa received a beautiful house in Queens, with a backyard, 4 bedrooms, and a new bathroom. Rosa was promoted to supervisor at the company with a salary she never imagined having. Maya received a full scholarship to one of the best private schools in New York, but more than that, the two families became one. On a Saturday evening, everyone was gathered at the penthouse. Sophia and Maya were drawing on the floor. Rosa and Elizabeth were laughing in the kitchen making cookies. Thomas was watching it all, sitting on the sofa, and for the first time in years he felt peace. Maya got up and went to him. "Mr. Thomas," she said softly. Maya hesitated, bit her lip, and then said, "You know, when I found Sophia crying that day, I thought, how can this be? She has everything, has a beautiful home, has food, has clothes, and she's so sad. Then I understood something. Money doesn't hug. Money doesn't ask how your day was. Money doesn't wipe away tears. We might not have much at home, but my mother always saw me. Always." She paused and looked into Thomas's eyes. "And now you see Sophia too, and that's worth more than everything." Thomas felt the tears fall. He pulled Maya into a tight hug and whispered, "You taught me what's important. You taught me how to be a father. Thank you." Sophia joined the embrace, then Elizabeth, then Rosa. And there, in that moment, In the middle of that luxury penthouse, what shone wasn't the marble, nor the expensive paintings, it was love. Listen, if this story reached deep into your heart, if it made you think about what really matters in life, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel right now, because we're building a community of people who believe that real stories have the power to transform lives. But I want more than your subscription. I want you to be part of this family. Down in the comments, tell me, what's the most important lesson you learned from Maya and Sophia's story? Have you ever been so busy that you forgot to see the people you love? Or maybe you've been the invisible person waiting to be noticed. Share your story with us. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you know someone who needs this message, someone who's been so focused on success that they forgot about what truly matters, send them this video. Sometimes a story can say what we can't find words to express. Thank you for being here, for listening, for caring. See you in the next story, and remember, we're only invisible if we allow ourselves to be.